One game does stand out in my mind. I guess it's because we won, and we won big, and it was in 1952 against the New York Giants. They had a great team that year. I think they won the Eastern Division. It was our first year as a T-formation club, and we were struggling. But we played them in Pittsburgh this Sunday and beat them 63-7.
Steelers offense remains red hot as Jim Finks strokes the scoring 2-yard heave to Albie Nickel, and Pittsburgh pulls away to a 21-0 lead over New York. Then Jim Finks pours more coal on the fire with a 6-point pitch to Ray Matthews, giving the Steelers a stunning 28-0 halftime advantage.
But everything we did that day was right, and everything they did was wrong. And the person who ended up being their quarterback was Tom Landry.
The New Yorkers revert to form on this play with a wild display of firehorse football. It's Tom Landry on the tossing end of a pass to Bill Scribbling, who goes down but bounces up quickly. When the Steelers hem him in, Scribbling laterals to Joe Scott, who, when collared, laterals back to Scribbling, and the lanky end streaks goalward. Billed in the 5, but scrambles up and dives across on the scoreboard, but on the short end of a 35-7 count at the end of the third period. In the final period, and for the fourth time in the game, a touchdown toss by Jim Finks rains through the Giants' umbrella defense. It's Dick Hensley completing the 60-yard effort that makes the score read 42-7 in favor of the Steelers, who can do nothing wrong today. Conversely, the Giants don't seem to be able to do anything. Tom Landry's punt is blocked by Dale Dodrill and scooped up by George Hayes, who goes across to put the underdog Pittsburghers on the cozy end of an amazing 49-7 score.
And Steve did say after the game, he had the reputation of being the finest defensive coach in the National Football League. He said it was a good thing he was a good defensive coach because the score might have been 163-7.
To talk to the president and general manager of the New Orleans Saints, no stranger to anyone in Minnesota, Jim Finks. And Jim, of course, after so many years of success with Minnesota and Chicago, starting over again with New Orleans, a team that's looking for its first winning franchise in in your history.
And based on tonight, Mark, we might have a longer time to go. We do know this, that we're playing a good football club. I'm glad we're not in the Central Division. We spent 3 days in Platteville, Wisconsin this past week against the Bears. And everybody knows their strength, and now we come down here tonight with the Vikings. And I might pass this along. I think the Bears are looking over their shoulders of the Vikings because the way the Vikings played them last year, I think it's going to be a tremendous battle for that championship between the Vikings and the Bears.
I know how important you feel the head coach is certainly to a football club with Bring Minnesota. The same goes with Jim Mora here at New Orleans.
Jim is in many ways similar to Bud. Their styles are pretty much the same. Jim lets the coaches do much of the coaching. He's a very good judge of talent, of people, and I think we're going in the right direction.
What have been your impressions so far of this Vikings team? You've had a chance of watching the first half.
Oh, I saw enough of them last year, the last game, where I came in because
that's right.
That was the last game we played last year, and we had played good football up until that last game. And I'm not saying we didn't play as good as we could, but the Vikings were tremendous, and they just picked us apart, and they're doing the same thing tonight. And the thing I noticed about the Vikings, I think their defense is getting back to the way it was several years ago when they were a dominant force in the Central Division.
Final question. Actually, Jim Finks is also a big baseball fan. He just talked about an interesting story about Andy McPhail, the Twins' executive vice president. He had a little football background, Jim.
Yeah, well, first of all, I asked you how the Twins are doing. You told me, and I said Andy McPhail for general manager of the year. And Mark didn't realize that at one time Andy was a ball boy with us down at Mankato.
That's unbelievable.
That's a long time ago, but I wish him all the success in the world.
Jim, it's you, and congratulations and best of luck certainly to the New Orleans organization.
Thank you, Mark, and good luck, and I know you're going to have a great year following the Vikings this year.
All right, Jim Finks, general manager and president of the New Orleans Saints. And we're at...
Well, I tell you, I was excited because it took me back to the time that we started, and I scored the first touchdown. I tell you, these guys have nothing to be sorry about. They had a super year. Jim, I have a whole lot of respect for. Jim built this team in Minnesota, did the same thing in Chicago. Saints will be here to stay.
I found out the complete year that I was out, I should get back in because I was too young not to do anything, and I thank God for giving me this opportunity because it's been a very rewarding year and a half or almost 2 years. And my wife understands why I had to get back in. And,
you just missed it?
Yeah, I just missed it. It's something that I feel comfortable doing. I've done virtually all my life, and I think I have reasonable credentials and skills in doing it. I think I can cope with the pressure on a day-to-day basis, and I think that's important for anybody in this. You have highs and lows, and then you're on the middle ground, and I think you have to be pretty consistent. I can't afford the luxury of becoming too emotional. Even though I might be churning in my stomach, I can't afford the luxury of letting people know that I'm not in control, because I think that's important. I try to pay our players on their contribution of their value to the New Orleans Saints, and if the Giants want to do something, that's their prerogative. I'm sorry to learn I have the reputation of being tight. But,
You've never heard that?
Well, yes, I have, and it doesn't disturb me, but I think it's not factual. I think I have a few battles left. Had a very, very year this year from an injury standpoint for most of the year, so that helped us be a better football club, and we had some great performances by some people that we really didn't know whether they would come on or not, and finally we had a great coaching job from Jim and his staff, so everything fell into place. But 87 is history now. We got to start planning for 88, right, Coach?
That's right. We're ready to go.
To some guy who says, I'm not going to play here under any circumstances.
Make him an offer.
Oh, obviously you don't know how this business works. And, you know, I've got a feeling tonight Bobby Hebert is going to have a big night, Ron. Bobby's getting better each week, and our ground game is getting a little bit better, which is going to help him. And one of these days, Bobby's going to bust out, and I hope it's tonight.
All right, Jeff.
We'll not be bringing Bobby Hebert back. Bobby will not be offered a contract.
Him, as you know, hadn't been feeling good, and of course, unfortunately, the diagnosis came out that it was cancer. It's terrible.
Delegator. He give you a job to do, and he let you do it, and he wouldn't meddle. And if you did the job and he liked it, he'd tell you, and if you didn't, he'd tell you why, and you go back and do it again.
One thing I can say about the guy, he's always had a lot of respect for me as a football player and as a person, and to me that's one of the most highest honors that you can pay to a person, is to respect him as a human being and as a football player. He missed.
Jim liked to refer to people, if they were just real good football people, as a purist, and he was the purest of the purists when it came to a football guy, you know, a football man. And I think that everybody that came in contact with him in our business had such a great deal of respect for him because of that.
He backed everything I did up 100%, and anything we wanted we worked on together, and he didn't have to have the limelight, or he didn't have to be out front on anything. In fact, he preferred it that way. His satisfaction came out of doing a good job.
Another thing about Finks, he's got no ego. He doesn't try to impress you, and he's a solid executive. Is that Finks was available to come to New Orleans, and the first thing Finks did was hire Jim Mora, let him run the football team, and Benson let Finks run the draft in the front office. As soon as Finks got here and hired Mora, the curve has gone up.
He says, hey, we're just going to keep sawing wood, which means, hey, we know, we got our plan, we know how it's supposed to be done, we know what we got to do, and we're just going to, we have our little setbacks, adversity and failures, but we just keep sawing wood. And if we do it that way and not panic, not lose faith in one another, then we're going to be successful.
He was so considerate. That's the right word for Jim Finks. That's what makes Jim such a special person, his relationships with other people. He is a very considerate guy.
He'll always come back to you and talk to you almost like a father. Good advice on things. Just coming in and showing his concern. And those are the kind of things that you remember about Jim Finks. He's put this organization together. He means a heck of a lot to this organization. And without him around here, it is a bit different. You're used to seeing him out there in that golf cart, checking things out, coming in with the joking around with you. But those things we all miss.
Had a great working relationship, but it started out as a friendship, really, and then it went from there, and New Orleans was a benefactor of his talent and his personality and his friendship.
Well, he was the guy who drafted me out of college, and from that point on, we had somewhat of a fun relationship until he left and went to the Cubs, but he's someone that you never forget.
Friends for almost 25 years, and someone that I think I learned a lot about life and people and what important values are, so it's hard really to talk.
He was one of the great people in the history of the National Football. I've always said the greatest names that I've ever known, of course, and I'm prejudiced, of course, when I mention Lombardi, but Mr. Hallis was probably the greatest name this league has ever known. And now we have Jim Finks.
He was one of a kind, and he had so many friends in the league, and people that respected him, liked him, a sense of humor, very, very solid in everything he did. Well, it shows in his record. The record speaks for itself.
And make it official. I'm going to present this hat to him, okay? So, Jim, welcome on board, partner.
Thank you, brother.
All right.
Felt, ever since they came into the National Football League in 1967, that this could be one of the great franchises in the National Football League. Potentially can be the best franchise in the National Football League. All you have to do is win. And a way to win. When it's going to happen, I don't know, but I can assure you it will happen. To become the president of the National Football League, and I had no interest in it. It was an undefined job. I didn't know what it was. I had no interest in it. I was flattered at the outset that I was recommended by the majority of the owners for the commissioner job. And that's the only job that I was interested in. As I said before, Bonds in 1986 was the greatest thing ever happened to me, and I'm happy with my job, and let's get on and kick Atlanta's ass.
Thanks, Ed McCaskey, to Virginia and all the McCaskies we've known, who've been our friends and supporters of our family over the years. How lucky we are to be in this, something Jim Finks said quite often to his wife and his contemporaries during his 43 years in professional football as a player and an executive. He said this because he witnessed firsthand the steady growth and popularity of professional football over parts of 6 different decades, and he recognized his good fortune for being part of it. Dad said how lucky we are to be in this business because he was almost destined not to last in the NFL. In his second season as a defensive back with the Steelers, he came up to make a tackle in a game against the Colts and broke his neck. They thought he'd never be able to play pro football again, that he'd leave Pittsburgh and return to Oklahoma, or he'd take a job as a high school football coach in Hobart, Oklahoma. He was converted from defensive back to quarterback. But not everything was rosy in those days with the Steelers. As a young bride sitting in the stands at Old Forbes Field, Mom would tell us a certain chant would rise up from the crowd when the breaks were going against the Steelers. Finks stinks. It's a true story. They got over it okay. And in 1952, things got better. The Steelers switched to the T formation in offense. And that year, Dad threw for 20 touchdown passes and over 2,000 yards in just 12 games and played in the Pro Bowl alongside the great Otto Graham. But it was when his playing career ended that his football education had just begun. From Pittsburgh, he was on to South Bend as offensive backfield coach at the University of Notre Dame under Terry Brennan. The Golden Boy, Paul Hornung, was there, playing his way towards winning the Heisman Trophy that season. And Dad would always tell Paul that it was his coaching that helped him win the Heisman. And Paul would say, sure, what about the rest of the offense? We went 2-8 that season. From South Bend, it was up to Calgary of the Canadian Football League. And it was the 7 years in Calgary which laid where Dad learned every aspect of running a pro football club, from the scouting, to making trades, to conducting a draft, to the program and ticket sales and getting along with the media. It was his 7 years with the Calgary Stampeders which laid the foundation for future success in the National Football League. As a father of 4 boys, he was honest and loyal. But when we got out of hand, he could be tough. Right, Dave? Whenever we had a problem or a question, he always had the right answer. If it wasn't the answer we wanted to hear, it was still sound advice. He always attended the games we played as kids, whether it was football, baseball, or hockey. As a husband, he was devoted to Maxine. They met at the University of Tulsa, and a marriage that lasted 43 years spoke volumes of how they felt about each other. As an executive, he had what you could call organizational tunnel vision, always striving to have the best organization from top to bottom. He was an astute judge of people. He surrounded himself with the best people, and he let them do their jobs. Whenever he received an award or any recognition, he'd usually deflect the praise to those around him. And had he been here today, I know he'd do the same thing. He was energetic with his time for family and friends. And of course, he had a great sense of humor. Anybody who lasts in the National Football League for over 40 years better have a sense of humor. A reporter asked him after a game about some questionable calls by the officials. They said, Jim, what about that referee and that crew? There were some pretty controversial calls there, weren't they? His immediate reply was, I'm not allowed to comment on lousy officiating. And we both enjoyed reading the quote in the paper the next day. To sum up what Jim Finks was all about, he kept these words written on a piece of paper in his wallet at all times. If we are ever unlucky enough to have it made, we'll be spectators and not participants in life. It's the journey, not the arrival, that counts. Does the road wind uphill all the way? Yes, to the very end. Jim Finks was known as a former Steeler, Viking, and Bear, but it's no coincidence he left this world a saint. Thank you. Let me thank Pete Elliott and everybody involved with the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the great people of Canton, Ohio. I want to thank the National Football League member clubs, players, owners, coaches, and especially the fans of the National Football League. It's an honor to be here. And today, along with my family and friends, I'm proud to represent my dad for his induction into Pro Football Hall of Fame's class of '95, with 2 of the greatest receivers of all time, and Steve Largent and Kellen Winslow, and 2 of the greatest defenders of all time, and Leroy Selman and the late Henry Jordan Sr. Thank you very much.